Live CDP, a weekly sports and entertainment podcast live on YouTube, Facebook Live, Twitter, and on audio via Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, and Anchor FM. Now here's your host, Chris Palme.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Live with CDP podcast on this Wednesday, July 6, 2022. Season 4, episode 6. I think this is about my 171st podcast now since March 2020. I'm looking forward to my guest today, by the way. His name is John Urban, and he is the online play-by-play voice for the London Lightning, the defending champion London Lightning. So just give me one moment, guys. I'm looking forward to speaking to John this afternoon and talk a little bit about the champion London Lightning and the NBLC and the future of the league going forward to next year, and maybe some sports too. John's a big sports fan and baseball fan as well. Just bear with me, guys, and I'm going to bring John Urban on right now. Good afternoon, John. How you doing?
Hey, good afternoon, Chris. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. And I see you got your Joey Votto Reds jersey on, number 19 from Etobicoke, Ontario.
That's right, the good old Canadian boy. I'm sorry, though, with the background, I should have worn my Orioles getup for today's broadcast.
Next time I'll put it. Yeah, and that's another thing, too. I need to get down to Cincinnati. I haven't been to a game there since Riverfront Stadium in 1999.
Okay, wow. I was blessed to go. I think it was 2 seasons ago. We went to Great American Ballpark. It was sort of a 3-stadium and 3-night kind of trip. We did Cincy, Cleveland, and Detroit. And I know you're a big Detroit fan. And I think that night in the Tigers game, it was really cool because they did it was like a Negro baseball historian night. So the KC Royals wore actually the Montgomery jerseys, and Detroit wore the Detroit Star jerseys, and all of us got Star jerseys too. So I got one of those at home, collecting dust in my my closet. I got to break that out soon.
Yeah, I got the Detroit Stars hat. I've got a ton of stuff, and it's like, you're right, it does collect dust after a while when you have so much of it, like jerseys, hats, signed photos, balls, pucks, everything.
I've been lately myself, Chris, to be honest with you, trying to hang as much up on the walls and put stuff on, try and get it in rotation and making sure it's worth having around, kind of thing.
Yeah, and I got the Champs hat from Audley after the game, June 1st. I was thinking about it. It's been over a month since that game happened, and I got to do a live interview with you on the court, and that was an amazing experience. Not just because London won, but it was a great game. It came down to the very end, and just seeing a championship team win like that, and then the Kitchener-Waterloo Titans, even without 4 players, and then Joe Kendrick being hurt, they played a hell of a series, and London had to work for that, earn it.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. That you think you'll look back after years and say, oh, London swept KW, but you don't look at the fine print and say, okay, no Ferguson, no Frazier, no Shaquan Barrett, who was the rookie of the year, Ron Artest III, who left early. And then, like you said, in that third and decisive game for the sweep, their MVP got hurt with the hip. And you could honestly see, I don't think I actually mentioned that on the air, but you could see that in games 1 and 2, there were times where he was kind of leaning on it funky. And who knows, he might have been battling that throughout the year or even throughout the Sudbury series prior to it.
But I was going to say, it was just a tremendous experience, tremendous game and series. And London, the whole year was the class of the league. And what I saw in that series was just great basketball. And hopefully there'll be more new fans for the NBLC next year going forward, because it's a very good league and it's a very competitive league.
Well, I'm sure the league probably doesn't want me bringing up this, thorn on the side of the rose, but that was the one disappointing thing actually about the entire 2022 season was the fan attendance. Obviously, COVID played a huge factor in that, Chris, but man, I know that the season prior, or even the COVID-stricken season that got shut down in February of 2020, the Bud was packed, and the fans were bumping, and that's no slouch on the NBLC, because to be honest with you, I look at the CEBL games, they look like they're having similar problems. And even today I was tuning into the Global Jam, where they got France versus Belgium on the women's side. I think the Canadians are taking on the Americans later on today, and I'm looking at the stands going, where the heck is everybody? So I don't think it's a London problem or an NBLC problem. I think it's a Canada basketball and COVID problem.
Well, yeah, and now they're talking about the COVID returning again and stuff like that. And I just think with the cost of it, I'm not making excuses. I think the cost of gas and the cost of everything going up, people don't, in my opinion, don't have as much free money or entertainment money as they used to.
Well, and we were even talking before we went on the air a little about, minor league baseball and how it's disappeared from the Canadian scene. That's a large part of the, economy base with our dollar comes to travel, like you just said, with fuel. And, maybe we'll get into it, but with the NBLC, I mean, there were only 4 Canadian teams. They were all located in Ontario. It was the Ontario Basketball League, if you will, for the 2022 season. As the Atlantic competition, a couple teams elected just not to play because of, like you said, travel restrictions, COVID related issues. And just the cost is going up. I mean, to travel from an Atlantic province to go 1,500 kilometers to Ontario is a daunting task, and you have to have some return on investment in order to do that.
Okay, and that leads to my first question I was going to ask you. Anyways, thoughts on the return of the NBL of Canada after a 2-year hiatus from the pandemic? What did you like about what happened this season, and we've already mentioned a few things, but what else would you like to see the league do in the future?
Well, I mean, my broadcast partner and I, John Van Houwelingen, mentioned it a couple times on the air that it seemed like, the basketball league was a perfect tourniquet for the 2022 season. It looks like they've grown a partnership, and that's actually going to, head forward in 5 to 10 years possibly, and we'll see how that goes. But considering that there wasn't any Atlantic teams, there hasn't been any rebirth of any, other Ontario squads, or even an expansion out west in the National Basketball League of Canada in 2022. I mean, I think oddly, the commissioner of the league did a fantastic job of building a relationship with the basketball league, so that teams like the Syracuse Stallions, Albany Patroons, Flint United, Lansing Pharaohs, just to name a few, were taking on teams like London. And as you know, London's first loss of the season, after they went on a heck of a run to start, it happened in Albany to the Patroons. And from my understanding, you're following the basketball league far better than I am. It's either the Stallions or the Patroons are in the finals right now in that league, so they're no slouch of an opponent.
Yeah, thanks to Aaron and the NBL of Canada. And now I'm following the TBL, and right now it's the Albany Platoons taking on the Shreveport Mavericks. But it's only a best-of-3 series, and the lower seed gets the first game at home, and Shreveport took advantage of it and won game 123 to 115. They shot 17 for 30 from three-point line, 60%. Albany was like 7 for 27 for 30%. That was the difference in the game. Is Shreveport was hitting the threes and Albany wasn't. But game 2 is tonight at 7:00 on TBL TV. And then game 3 tomorrow night, which I suspect will happen, will be in Albany as well. And TBL, Maurice Jocks and Ali Jocks do the game for the Patroons. And I've gotten to know that team and the head coach, Will Brown, and their announcers. It's a great league. And I think what the league with the NBL of Canada did with that league is great. My only concern, John, is next year they need the games to make them count for the American teams, not just the Canadian teams, to make it a more competitive stand.
Yeah, that was a bizarre dynamic, right? For those that aren't aware, during the interleague games between the Basketball League and the National Basketball League of Canada, the games counted for the Canadian team standings wise, but they were essentially marked down as exhibition games for the Basketball League. And I do agree with you from sort of the sportsman angle of it, but again, with COVID restrictions, some of these teams, Chris, were coming with only 6 or 7 guys. I know the Dayton Flight came and played the Windsor Express, and I think they got murked by 40 plus points. And what kind of bothered me too is, I'd have my broadcast partner coming in the next game going like, oh, Chris is super hot last game, 45 points, shooting 80% for. It's like that is kind of the shooting star out of the rest of the settled skies, because it throws a curveball in what is the normal stats that you see across the sheet. So I mean, with no COVID restrictions, teams bringing full squads across the Canadian border and
Good
vice
point.
versa when we go down there, absolutely they should be both counting towards the standings. I made the comment many times this year, and it was kind of scoffed at, that maybe they should have done what the CFL did in the early 90s, where not only did they have American teams play, but hey, you're playing, you might as well have a shot at our championship. And if you recall, the Las Vegas Wranglers, baby, they won a Grey Cup.
The Baltimore Stallions.
Or was it the Baltimore?
Baltimore
They beat the Vegas Wranglers, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Baltimore won it. Yeah.
I'm
Don't worry
looking
about it.
foolish on your podcast.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. That was such a long time ago too, man. And you know what? They tried it. It didn't work out. But I really do think this arrangement long term will work, as long as they start making the games count for the American teams. And I like the fact that there's going to be a North American Cup, the TBL champ against the NBL champ, because I would have loved to seen Albany, or whoever wins this series between Albany and Shreveport, take on the London Lightning, because I really think Albany and London, man, they're two similar teams, well coached, and they're deep. It's not just they're talented, but they go from 1 to 12 on their bench.
And to go back to the Albany and Syracuse conversation, when Syracuse played in London, they were undefeated, but they were coming off of a game in Windsor the night before. So yeah, London beat them. Somebody's had to go there, but it would have been an interesting conversation to see London then play in Syracuse after a back-to-back. And then, going on the flip side of that coin, when London lost their first game of the season to the Albany Patroons, that was a long bus trip. They went to Kitchener the following day, and they actually lost their only game of the regular season to the Titans that night. So again, you flip it, you bring Albany back to the Budweiser Gardens. How does London, compare? So yeah, the intriguingness of seeing their champ versus our champ as a North American belt potentially being on the line. I like it. I like it. And I will play devil's advocate to myself a little bit. I really wish that we could be growing the sport more internally, as in Canada.
Yes.
I'd like to see more of, expansion out west and expansion into Quebec. I think, I might be downright silly here, but I think Quebec is a very hot market for basketball that is not being tapped into. I know, the NBA, if they had it their way, they'd have a franchise in Montreal right now. So, I'm kind of shocked that, we're not heading in that direction. There is whispers in the wind that there might be a Montreal franchise in the National Basketball League of Canada next year. I think regardless, and this is no disrespect to the Basketball League, regardless of the partnership or relationship with them heading forward, there has to be a continual concentrated effort on growing the sport across Canada, first and foremost. Despite the relationship I love, and I hope it brings a fortuitous basketball in the future for a lot of young basketball players. And I think that's what this is all about at the end of the day, is providing more opportunities across the board. Not to keep ragging on, but I think one of my highlights so far of calling National Basketball League of Canada action was my first year on Rogers TV, knowing that I called Xavier Moon games, and then seeing him go into the G League, tough it out, and then get that NBA contract and play with the Clippers. I know Paul and the Claw were hurt, but still to see that guy get his shot, to me, that's what these leagues are supposed to be about. That minor building system, to see that next star rise in action. And historically, no scuff against the league, it's kind of been the opposite. It's been the Carl Englishes, the Big Baby Davises, the guys coming off of the near end of their career, sort of, wrapping it up and having fun while they're at it.
Yeah, I was going to say realistic. I think Audley's mentioned this, that they want to get back to at least 6 teams next year, which is better than 4. But ideally, long term, I think the NBL of Canada should try for at least 10 teams, 5 on the East Coast and 5 on the West Coast, ideally. But I see where Audley's coming from. He doesn't want to expand too quickly. So at least next year, I think from what he was telling me, they're going to have 2 more teams. And I heard Montreal is one of them. The other one, I'm not sure about yet.
Well, and again, not to be a cloudy day on this conversation, but you look at a league that had over 12 teams at one point, had over 8 teams in the previous COVID-stricken season. So to go down to 4, yes, it goes back to transportation, COVID restrictions, and how the Atlantic side of Canada sort of got shut down. That really built a wall throughout the entire league. But again, 6 teams is better than 4. I'll give you that. But I think you bring the Atlantic back in. That's your first step back to even ground, if you will. So maybe it's not next season. Maybe it's the year after that. Sure. And then building those, I've been saying this for a couple years now, building the interdivisional. You have an Ontario conference. You have an Atlantic conference. Then building sort of a Quebec, Ottawa, Kingston Central market, I think would be so crucial, especially for just travel, because then you don't necessarily have to have these long flights. And then a team could, in theory, do a trip from Montreal, Ottawa, Kingston, down to London, up to Sudbury, and then back up to the Atlantic side of things. Whereas just flying, for instance, from, let's say, the Cape Breton Highlanders, who used to be a team in this league, for them just to join only to fly down and play, KW, London, Windsor, and have to fly back. Obviously, I don't see it financially being feasible.
And I was gonna say, right now, I've been involved with the other league too, the CEBL. They're just a little bit ahead of the NBL right now. So, to me, like I said, you're right. Having a team on the East Coast again would be great. A team in Montreal, even Kingston, or even Belleville, maybe Kingston or Belleville on the Eastern market. Like you said, ideally it'd be nice to have 4 in Ontario and then 4 on the East side too. But we'll see what happens.
And I'm not going to be too cryptic. I love the CEBL and everything that it brings to growing the sport of basketball. But the only cryptic thing I'll say is beware of the Wizard of Oz, though, Chris. It's a lot easier when let's say one man behind the curtain is running the entire show,
absolutely,
rather than a whole bunch of different owners and different organizations trying to get together. So
absolutely.
What you see is what you get, not necessarily with the CEBL, although it looks amazing on paper, and what the product is on those CBC streams seems fantastic to me.
And that's the one thing too. I like the NBL-TV. I think you guys do a great job, Aaron, yourself, and the guys from Kitchener and Sudbury. But I would like to see a game of the week on Rogers TV, or even get on Sportsnet or TSN, just to get the league a little more exposure.
Well, and when I joined this league originally, that's how I actually got involved, was calling the games on Rogers TV. Again, from my understanding, on just a local level, it wasn't doable because they just didn't have the crews with volunteers. I know I've done volunteering with Rogers way back in the day. I know you've done volunteering with Rogers too. And there can be diehards like you and I holding the camera, but if there isn't a producer, if there isn't an announcer, if there isn't a whole fleet of other teammates involved, it's hard to do a broadcast of that nature. So that was my understanding. Again, whispers in the wind is that Rogers will be back into the scene. And again, I think to your point that it's not even, I think Cujo Entertainment specifically with that did a phenomenal job. I don't see any difference between what they do and what Rogers TV does. It's just the actual exposure of being a local person flipping through their channels and going, oh, there's a Lightning game on. It's that promotional value is something that you don't necessarily get from online exposure.
And I was also going to suggest too, from another league, they do this. If the game is online, even online streaming, have it on a local radio station too. So some people that don't have access to the internet or online, they can at least tune in onto the radio and listen to that broadcast.
Well, for a guy that called sports on the radio for 9 years, including basketball, football, and hockey, I'm not going to deny that idea.
Okay, because that's, to me, they just need my opinion is they just need to get a little bit more on social media and get their product out there, because
that's the funny thing. Like, I mean, not to cut you off, Chris, but I would just say the social media with the NBLC, I think, is, as the kid would say, is fleek. I don't know. They put a lot of cool promotional, productional work into the videos, the social media, like the interview. They're presenting it well. I think it's, again, though, it's like that tree falling in the woods theory. It's like it's really great content. Who's seeing it? They got to get it out there more. The promotional aspect, but the actual, when you watch the videos and the interviews, and you like it
well
is
done,
fantastic, well done content.
Yeah.
Absolutely, very comparable to the professional leagues you see down south.
I was gonna say maybe they should get on. I'm not sure if they're on TikTok, but there's another platform right there that's getting quite popular. And now I'm on TikTok, and I've got almost 900 followers on there. And I was gonna say that's another tool they could use too. I'm not sure if they are on there yet or not.
Hey, shout outs to your TikTok followers then, Chris. And I agree with you. You got to go with the way the world is. Hey, I feel like I'm an old man when you talk about TikTok and that kind of stuff, but hey, it's what's connecting you to your customer base, right? So the biggest thing for me too, and this has nothing again to do with the Lightning individually, I think this is the league, is they should be approaching more of the minor league basketball systems around them and the youth levels, have more youth organized nights. And in my opinion, it's worth taking a loss of a cost, let's say on a Thursday night home basketball game, knowing that I didn't sell 1,000 of those tickets, but I have 1,000 screaming basketball youth-minded children, engaged in my game and engaged with my team, knowing that even if, going off of my marketing days, you have a 13% return on investment, that's some, 130 more people coming to your next game than you probably wouldn't have gotten if you didn't do that. So I'm a big math guy when it comes to that stuff. I'd rather take a few losses to have a gain later down the line, but I'm sure a lot of businessmen would disagree with me on that.
Well, sometimes in order to make money in the future, you got to spend a little bit. And the young people, the young kids are the future of your league. And if you get them involved, then the parents will bring to the game, and then and it's affordable entertainment. Like the NBL Canada is affordable entertainment out, and it's a good product. And they just need to get more exposure. Like I said, I love it.
London, I think twice, if I'm not mistaken, they had Ramblers, Lady Ramblers basketball during halftime. And to me, like, that's what the sports are. When I go to a Knights game and I see the Timbits skating around at intermission, to me, again, that's what the sport's about, growing the community as a whole. So I don't know, like, I'd love to see a lot more of that night in and night out.
Definitely. That leads to my next question. I'm not trying to put you on the spot here, but overall thoughts on the job done by Audley Stevenson, the NBL commissioner. And I've had him on my show. I've talked to him. He's a really good guy. I just wanted your overall thoughts on the job that he did this year in a trying circumstance with the pandemic. And it was not an easy season to have a league.
It's audacious, as he would say. Shout outs to his podcast. But I think I believe he's the fourth or fifth commissioner in this league, in a league that's been around for 10 years. So, I mean, right there, he's dealing with a hot potato that not many other men have been able to handle, right? And then you compound that with COVID, teams pulling out and having to, like I mentioned earlier in this show, put a tourniquet on this season as it seemed to be bleeding out. Let's face it, if they go multiple years with no season, you're not going to have many players come across the border to join your league anymore. And all of your promotion, all of the grassroots that you have built essentially will be ripped out of the ground. So Audley, in my opinion, was the Titanic captain that got the ship to New York City. It might have still been sinking. They might have lost a few lives along the way, but unlike all the others who failed and went down with the ship, he was able to get it at least to the port. Now, what does the future bring? How does the relationship with the basketball league help grow the sport? As we've been talking about earlier, I think that's great on a North American level, and it should help the National Basketball League of Canada. Will it help grow Canadian basketball? That will be remain to be seen. And I mean, I'm all for it, though. If it works, it works. And what Audley's been able to do, and like I said, to be able to survive the season, he's been able to survive audacious. He's amazing. I think he's done a fantastic job. And I believe I even shook his hand after the championship game and told him that in person, being like, hey, it's good luck in the off season, because I know it's not going to be an easy one for you. There's a lot of holes in the ship in order to fix. And what's needs to be said is none of those holes were from his doing or the league's doing or fans doing. And it's just COVID happened. it shut down. The 2019-2020 season was going off fantastic. Moncton was a beast in the East. London's were the best in the West. A lot of teams were starting to get really competitive, like Sudbury, like Kitchener. Out East, you had even St. John's Edge. I think it rattled London's cage one night. There was a great, healthy build there, and COVID really took a buckshot out of that entire equation.
Huge.
So, like we've already mentioned, he's trying to build it up together, bandage everything he can, and we'll see. My biggest thing, again, my standard bar, if you will, is in the next 2 to 3 years, can we get back to the level where the league was with Canadian content? That's where my judgment lies. But what he's done over the last 2 seasons has been phenomenal, especially given the situation, and especially given the fact that 3 or 4 men prior to him would have probably have jumped ship from the same problems.
Yeah, and I was going to say, and he gave this guy an opportunity to be a member of the media affiliates, and a lot of the games I got to speak to the coaches, mostly Doug, a lot of the post game shows because the Lightning won, and I got to talk to some players too. So he's given me an opportunity to get experience in what I'm trying to get into.
No, and I think the one thing I'll say about him, unlike the David Branches of the world, Audley's pretty approachable. And he's actually a guy that'll shake your hand, give you his time for a conversation, and open up that door of opportunity, right? So I not only appreciate what he's done from a business and a professional level with the league, but I obviously love the guy as far as his approach personally to how he treats all the individuals, players, staff, media people like you and I. You need somebody like that at the top of the pyramid in order to guide the league in the right direction. So, again, not just what he's been able to do with the X's and O's, so to speak, with the actual league and how it's been doing, but just his general approach and aura it's always a comforting one to be around. So it's for a commissioner, you won't find that very often.
And the other league, I won't. I'm going to leave it at that. But this league has given me an opportunity, and they've given me great opportunities, and I'm going to continue to be loyal to the NBL of Canada. And I'm looking forward to next year being a part of the league and covering the games as a media member and doing the Zoom calls again as well.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see again. I assume all 4 teams are going to be back no matter what. That's, I think, 100% guaranteed. We keep hearing whispers of Montreal. You say it's potentially 6 teams, so that means another one's got to come back. Now, is that one of the East teams? Because remember, 2 of the East teams simply said, hey, we're just sitting out this 1 year because of the restrictions and the travel that the Atlantic side of the country was going through, especially during the pandemic. So lots of fun things to wait out for until the first tip off of the 2023 season.
My question
2022, 2023.
That was going to lead to my next question. When are they tentatively going to start up in December, or are they going to wait until January, the new year? Do you know that yet?
End, I mean, you're talking just a media. I'm a chimpanzee swinging from the tree, my friend. But as far as my understanding, they want to get the league back to a regular season schedule. So that would, to me, infer a November start,
Okay.
like a late fall, early winter start, because that's how it was in the previous season before COVID happened, right?
Yep.
So, and, not again to get into this and that, but with the CEBL, near the end, there was a little bit of drama, right? Because the National Basketball League's championship crept up right until training camp of the CEBL. Teams were saying you got to stay. Teams were saying you got to go. And it's not fair to any player involved. And to me, it just seems so suicidal in the fact that it's not going to grow any league as far as favorability. I'll go to New Zealand. I'll go to Germany. I'll go to Venezuela. What do I got to deal with this?
I was going to ask you this too, and I brought this up a couple years ago. It would have been nice to see both leagues emerge into one and become like the Ontario Hockey League of basketball, financial standpoint and from the city standpoint. But obviously, I don't think it's ever going to happen with those leagues.
Well, no, and again, I don't know how much I'm allowed to say out here, but essentially, from my understanding, what's been told to me is you would be going into a meeting if the 2 leagues join, for instance, And every team that had one owner would be going up against an owner that has many teams. And they want to have a seat for each team that they have. So let's say, Chris, you have 5 teams, you have 5 votes. I just have 1 vote. Well, then you outnumber me every time we have a conversation about how transactions should happen, scheduling, league rules, etc. Right? So I think that's the major hiccup. And I'm not really afraid to say it because I think something like that needs to be exposed in order to, again, the idea on paper is exactly what needs to be happening. But, again, that street wasn't open. So now we have Audley doing the best thing he can, and that's joining the basketball league with the National Basketball League of Canada. And then you're going to see it sort of grow on hopefully a North American level. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to happen overnight, but you could have London Lightning fans down in Arkansas and Louisiana and, upper New York State, all across, in theory, if the symbiotic relationship works out.
Definitely. Hey, before I get to some Lightning question, I just wanted to show a clip of that Game 3 again against Kitchener-London, the final couple minutes of it. And you were a part of the broadcast, and I just want to get your thoughts on being a part of that final game against Kitchener. Just 1 second. I'm just going to put it on right now.
As the London Lightning look to complete the drive for 5 over the KW Titans on Wednesday. First quarter, Amir Williams electrifies the Lightning offense. The big man scores 7 consecutive points and sparks a 7-0 team run in the first 90 seconds to set the tempo early. Later in the first quarter, Terry Thomas picks up the electricity and runs away with it. 14 of his 25 points come in the first. Lightning lead by double digits all the way to the mid-third. Dewan Miller gives it to Terrell Tate off the steal for the bucket. Seconds later, Miller off the pick sets up the 3 for Jesse Jones to cut the lead down to single digits. Then, fasten your seatbelts.
Thomas gets stripped on the play. Miller bounce pass. Jones. Transition left hand. Easy finish. Across the timeline comes Jesse Jones behind the back. Goes to the screen. Crossover from left to right. Loses the handle on the floor to Craig. Craig with the long jumper. Craig gets it to go. Always coming in the late stages this game. Always lots of theater. Jones high off glass. Craig rebound. Craig with the clamp.
Down by 12 with 12. Down by 5 with 5. They're down by 3
Screen long. Craig. Oh my goodness. That would have been on ESPN if he got that. Landon gets it to go.
After trailing for more than 45 minutes, the KW Titans take their first lead of the game with a Tyrell Tate made free throw. After made free throws back from Marie Isom, Chris Jones steps inside for the bucket. Under 5 seconds to go, Jabari Craig draws the foul off Terry Thomas and drains the first of 2 free throws. Then,
Jabari Craig with the biggest free throw of his career. Tied game for championship. What do we have here? Craig with the fall through. Craig too strong. Tipped out of bounds by the Lightning. Caparici with the handoff. Miller looking for Tate. Lob. Craig with the tip. No! The drive for 5 has arrived. London, you are 2022 NBLC champions.
for the 5th time in franchise history, the NBLC championship goes to London, their first title since 2017, league's first champion since the 2018-19 season. Terry Thomas picks up the finals MVP to go along with the Canadian Player of the Year and 6th Man of the Year awards, all while London goes perfect at home.
Anyways, that clip was courtesy of the National Basketball League of Canada. And I was going to ask you, what was it like being a part of that broadcast with the Kitchener-Waterloo Titans?
Well, I went down to celebrate and drink champagne, and then all of a sudden I was asked by the commissioner whether I wanted to be a part of the broadcast. And ironically enough, shout outs to Greg Campbell. He's the guy that you heard calling the game for the most part there in Game 3, and from my understanding was pretty much the voice of the KW Titans for the latter half of that season. I actually trained Greg, so to speak, back at Radio Western in London, Ontario, as I was a director of the sports news and spoken word department there. So things kind of came full circle for us, as we used to call OUA and U Sports basketball games for the Western Mustangs. And interesting. Greg and I never called a championship game because at least back in those days, over the course of the 3 or 4 Greg was there and the 9+ I was there, the basketball teams never made it to a championship. Ironically enough, the year I left, Chris, both teams made it to the championship. But enough of that. Just being able to be a part of that game, it was more of a trip, just like I said, to be doing it with Greg Campbell and to come full circle on that equation. And then to actually be a part of it after calling games 1 and 2 back at home, very special because, then the team technically goes 17-0 when I'm calling the games in 2022. So that was pretty cool. And just the fact that they never lost in front of me, point blank period, made the experience even that much cooler, I'd say.
I was going to say, this is my next question I was going to ask you. When did you know this team was a championship caliber team? Did you know it right away, or did it take a little bit into the season to know it was going to win that championship?
I mean, I'm going to sound kind of foolish when I say this. I think it was like the first or second game at home, speaking with their head coach, Doug Plum. I kind of said this a couple times on the air, and I don't know if many people picked up on it, but Doug Plum, not only a fantastic coach, but a phenomenal athlete in his own right. The guy runs marathons and does his own grit day for Parkinson's. And essentially before every single game, he was running around doing like laps in the actual rink with headphones on. And he was telling like the media like us before the season even began, no team's going to outwork us. And to me, when your head coach is doing like McKinney miles pregame, and he was doing this even when teams were warming up, I think it was almost like an intimidation factor for the opposition because there they are warming up against, potentially the number 1 team in the league at that time. And they're watching their head coach, dripping in sweat, running stairs, running miles around the rink. So that sort of set a tone for me right away that they were going to be a dominant squad. To be honest with you, did I think that they were going to, stay undefeated at home the entire time and absolutely sweep through the playoffs? No, I thought there'd be a lot more drama and some stickier mud, considering the suspension to Jones that happened, changes in their lineup from Jalen Tate moving on and bringing in guys like Lance. So there was I thought a lot more sandpaper coming out of this season, but it was a lot more smooth sailing. And I think that goes as a great credit to, number one, their ownership and Vito Frisia, their management and Mark Frisia, and then again, their head coach and Doug Plum. I think if you keep that trident or that trifecta in place, I don't think London's going to be knocked off the top of the mantle anytime soon. And again, I know they say the league's 10 years in its history, but remember, because of the COVID-stricken season, they only handed out 9 championships so far in their history. London has 5 of them. 5 out of 9.
That's pretty good.
Pretty good math.
That's a dynasty. That's a dynasty. So, but I was going to say, seeing him on the sidelines for a game, very intense guy. And you know what? He's an old school. Believes in hard work and being accountable and making no excuses. And you're right, the word hard work. And that's what I saw from this London team this year is they might not have had their best games all the times, but they always worked hard and they always managed to get the job done at the end. There were some games where they kind of had their they call them laws in the second and third quarter. And then
the third quarters historically throughout the entire 2022 season were dismal for London. And a quirky story. I mean, I don't know if it's 100% true, but Norm Plum, who's Doug Plum's dad, came to visit his son during the playoffs and watched them on their playoff run. He was one of the first ones to go, well, why aren't you bringing basketballs out to the guys after halftime and let them warm up again? And it seemed for the most part that they weren't so ice cold and clunky coming out of third quarters anymore. And it actually took the old OG Norm Plum to point that out to his son. And it seemed to work out the kinks. So the team in itself, phenomenal. but it takes that great leadership, and, you know, leading with your mouth is one thing with the intensity that Doug brings. But like I was mentioning before, Doug did it physically too. He'd show you before the game sweating himself. So it's hard to match that kind of coach in this league.
I'm hoping to have him on my podcast one day, just to tell me how much of an adjustment it was from being a player going into as an assistant coach into a coaching stuff, and just to get his mindset like on a game day and stuff like that. And like I said, definitely he's good for guys like him, are great for the league. And I think Doug, if he wants to, could go to the G League or eventually get into the pro ranks at some point.
Yeah, I know that he easily could go into the collegiate ranks right now if he wanted to, but I don't think that's what his journey is wishing. And then as far as, you know, the guy himself, I know has many opportunities down the line the way he performs. And I hope if you do have him on his podcast, you talk about his grit day, which he puts on for Parkinson's, and you talk about all these miles and marathons that he runs. He's a maniac as far as I'm concerned when it comes to that.
Yeah, and I need to lose about 25, 30 pounds because I've put on weight from this pandemic, and then working the media for the Buffalo Bisons. Pat Malacaro set it up for me. They gave me media buffet passes. So both games I ate well. So I said,
okay, wow.
But I brought Pat coffee crisp from Canada. So he wanted some coffee crisp because he can't get them in the States. So it worked out. He got his chocolate bars, and I got my buffets. I haven't had a buffet in 3 years because of the pandemic. So
I was going to say, I think, not to kind of change the subject, the best media buffet I've ever had to be the 2017 Memorial Cup in Windsor. They had a chef on tap, and it was just amazing.
Good to know that. Good to know that. And I've befriended a lot of guys from Windsor too. Steve Bell and Manny Pava from the Spitfires, and Aaron Sanders and Neil Foreman. I met him and had him on my show when he was assistant coach with the Express. Neil's another great guy too. And I hope he's back with the Titans next year as head coach.
And shout outs to Glenn Mills. He's the head coach of the Essex Ravens down there. And shout outs to Kevin Hamlin. I think he's still the head coach of the Windsor Lancers men's hockey team. All those guys do a phenomenal job of bringing the community together there within their sports.
Okay, and here's a question I wanted to ask you. Since you covered the Lightning and did all their home games, which players on the Lightning kind of surprised you and had breakout seasons in your opinion? We've already kind of answered the other question about what was the turning point in this season, but I just wanted to ask you that.
Oh, geez. My opinion would change throughout the season, though, to be honest with you. I thought Jalen Tate had this great dribble drive offense, and then, you know, as time progressed, whether it was an injury or whatever, the offense just wasn't clicking through him properly, as it seemed to be going through Chris Jones a lot smoother, I should say. And as far as surprise, I mean, he's probably Smoothie What Up's probably going to kill me for saying this, but like Cameron Forte started off so dominant. Like, I thought the guy was literally going to have 40, 20 nights consecutively the way he was playing. And then it just sort of, I want to say like tampered off the table. And coincidentally, when that happened, he all of a sudden went from the starting five into more of a bench player. I mean, talk about having a pretty good problem if you're Doug Plum. You got a double-double machine sitting on your bench just waiting to get into the game, salivating. But to me, it was kind of a surprise, but in a different way, if you will. Like, I thought that Cameron Forte was going to be the clear MVP of the league. I thought he was going to average over 35 a game and have over 10 rebounds per contest and throw in a couple blocks here and there too. As far as pleasantly surprised, I mean, I didn't know anything about Amir Williams heading into 2022, and the guy is phenomenal. I'm sure he's tired of being called the former Ohio State Buckeye after having all the other professional experience after that. But to set the individual game block record, beating out Elvin Mims for the London Lightning in blocks set per game. And then I know he didn't give Tyran Walker of the Titans any run for his money for most blocks in the year, and therefore Tyran grabbed the Defensive Player of the Year award. But I thought Amir Williams was right up there. So as far as like biggest surprise was Amir. Not necessarily surprised in his play, but surprised at all the accolades he got was Terry Thomas. I know Terry Thomas is a good player, but I didn't think he was going to be the Canadian Player of the Year, Finals MVP, sixth man of the year. How are you the sixth man when you're in the starting five? That's what I want to know, Chris.
Not sure, but he was a tremendous player as well. Now I'm going to put you on the spot with this question too. Do you feel this Lightning team will be kept together for another run at a sixth NBL title back to back? And what were your thoughts again on the finals against Neil Foreman and the Kitchener-Waterloo Titans overall?
Well, I'll try and answer that in consecutive order. So one, I think you're in a league that's really tough, right? Because I hate to, face facts, but let's say I am really good. Well, then in theory, I want to sign a G League contract. I want to try and get back into that NBA avenue, right? And vice versa. There's opportunities. I know there was a guy, Ryan Taylor, signed with the London Lightning, played 2 games, hit a game winner in KW at the Auditorium versus the Titans in the regular season. And then all of a sudden went, you know what? I'm getting a fat contract offer from New Zealand. Bye-bye. The weather's nicer there. So he played 2 games in the league and he flew off.
Wow.
So just on that note, I don't see this team sticking together like you would see an NBA franchise try to do. Like the Dubs dynasty is going to try and do. You're going to keep your Clays, you're going to keep your Sess, you're going to keep your Draymond Greens. Now, as far as what like the London franchise and fans would want, absolutely you'd want, Chris Jones, Cameron Forte. You'd want all these guys back. Amir Williams, 100%. Terry Thomas. I mean, even guys down the bench you'd want to bring back. Jordan Jensen-White, Marique Isom, Jermaine Haley. You'd want to bring the whole entire team back. But is that the reality of this league? Probably not. I also think if you bring back Doug Plum, he's a perfectionist. So even when they were coming up to the deadline, right, they were making acquisitions and making lineup transactions. So, I mean, just given off of, what we've seen from Doug Plum and the league's characteristics, I don't see the whole team sticking together. I mean, it didn't after the COVID-stricken season, and that team was number 1 in their division when it all fell apart, right? So there was no Garrett Williamson, no AJ Gaines, no Xavier Moon, who went off and played for the G League and ended up playing in the NBA with the LA Clippers. So I kind of see that happening again. It'd be great for the London fan base, though, to have a couple names to cheer back that ran it back from a 5th championship to try and get it for a 6th championship. But we'll wait and see. And then going to the NBLC finals, I kind of mentioned it on the air that like Neil Foreman, I was doing research on him, like he's a project developer for the last 20 years, his high school basketball experience and within these like private basketball clubs, but no real no slouch to Neil, but big boy basketball experience, right? So to see what he was able to do with that franchise, to lead the Titans to the finals, and then again, no fault of his own, Ferguson, who I think was his second best player on his team, goes down. You had Frazier, the flat top, who was always rocking a good performance on the court. Shaquan Barrett was named the Canadian Rookie of the Year. And then you had Ron Artest III. And I know when I said this, a lot of people were like, wow, Barrett and Artest aren't going to change the game. Having bullets in the chamber helps, though, especially in the 3rd, 4th quarter, to have more people on your bench. Yep. I don't care who it is at that point. It's a numbers game. So to have 4+ people missing from him, and then to have his MVP, finally that hip give out in game 3, I think the writing was finally on the wall there, despite the fact that we just saw in that highlight. It came down to, Jabari Craig tips that ball in, and we're heading to game 4 of that series, right? And you just never know what momentum can do in a best of 5. So the actual finals was far more thrilling, as I was alluding to earlier, than I ever predicted. I thought, that it was going to be a little bit of a sandpaper style affair, but then when everybody dropped off the table on the Titan side, it was kind of written for London to take it. And we'll see, though. Again, you add more teams, you add the basketball league maybe more heavily involved in the schedule, and like you said, maybe the games have more of an impact on their standings too, so you see more of a full deck coming up the border. Who knows how that pans out in 2022, 2023.
I was going to say, how many games do you figure they're going to go back to next year? 32? What was it before the pandemic? Do you remember?
Oh, it was supposed to be over 40 from my understanding pre-pandemic, because we were already played something like 20 something games and still had a month or two of regular season before the COVID shut everything down. Thanks, Rudy Gobert. And then, yeah, but again, though, if you didn't have the basketball league involved, from my understanding, you'd have the Canadian teams playing each other over 8 times in the season, right? And this last season, they still played each other 6 times, right? London had a gentleman's sweep 5-1 over KW. So I think it'd be nice. Again, it all depends. Like, I'd like to wave a magic wand for you, but the other thing is I don't know how many teams are going to be involved. I don't know how heavily involved the basketball league is as far as interdivisional matchups, number one. And then what's like you were alluding to, what's the weight of those matchups? Because I think if you put more weight in them and you add more of them into the schedule, then you easily should have a 40, 50 game regular season schedule, in my opinion, if you're truly having a interleague battle with the basketball league. And I was truly shocked. I'm this my first year knowing about the basketball league, doing research on teams like the Syracuse Stallions and the Lansing Pharaohs. And you find out a lot of those teams like the Flint United and Lansing Pharaohs are sort of spring chickens in that league too. And the league's only a couple years old. So, but you see how fast it's expanded, and it's pretty much a coast to coast kind of thing. I'm pretty sure there's a Little Rock Lightning team too.
Yes, there is.
Down in Arkansas. So I want to see a Lightning versus Lightning battle next year on the schedule.
They have 6 divisions, and I believe they have 42 teams. And this year they only played, I believe the TBL in the regular season only played a 20-game schedule. So you're right, there's still a lot of questions to be answered and a lot of work for Audley and the league to do. Both leagues need to do for next year as well. Hey, just since I got you on here, before I let you go, some breaking NFL news that just happened about an hour ago. Baker Mayfield traded to the Carolina for a 5th-round pick in 2024. Thoughts on that?
Where quarterbacks go to die, Carolina. I mean, it didn't work with Newton. It didn't work with the guy they brought in from the Jets organization. It didn't work. It didn't work out with Teddy Bridgewater. What can you say? I mean, Baker Mayfield, I feel like ever since he ran from the cops during his time in Oklahoma, he has gotten like a bad rep, almost like a bad taste in your mouth that you can't get rid of. It doesn't matter if he has success on the field. He's questioned. If he doesn't have success, he's hammered. It's a tough situation. I think he had to get out of Cleveland, obviously, with all the drama that was going on there. If anybody can at least bridge a 2-year deal for himself and then maybe find himself on the Saints after, like Teddy Bridgewater did, and maybe it's Baker Mayfield.
Okay, my question for you is, Deshaun Watson still has his legal issues. What if the NFL says, hey, we're going to suspend you for 6 games or a year? Who the hell is there going to be their quarterback until Watson comes back? Because I figure Watson at some point is going to get suspended.
If that happens, from my understanding, though, the NFL's already done an independent investigation because there was no criminal charges brought forward. That'll be really hard to do. However, we saw, I hate all these discussions, to be honest with you, Chris, because I feel so grimy about it. But you think about the Trevor Bauer situation in LA, very similar thing, right? Criminally found innocent. All the evidence points towards him being innocent. Not innocent in the fact that maybe things didn't happen, but in the context of how they happened. Yep. And then the league goes off and turns on his back and goes, you know what, we're suspending you for a whole season. Not to put my tinfoil hat on, but as a baseball fan, I do find it pretty ironic, though, that the guy that was kind of exposing the tricks of the trade when it came to pitching of the last 2 to 3 decades all of a sudden gets annexed by the league when a situation like this happens. And very similar to Deshaun Watson. If you recall, this didn't really the bubbles didn't even come to the surface until Deshaun wanted out of the Houston organization, a Houston organization that already wasted JJ Watt and the rest of the entire talented stuff like Andre Johnson and the other stars that have come and gone from that organization, and no real accolades to speak of.
Okay. And last question I wanted to ask you, John, who are your favorite sports teams, athletes, and your most memorable sports memory? And where can my audience find you on social media, or where they can check you out on Instagram if they want to follow you?
Sure. We'll go with the easier one. The Instagram is the.urban.native. So the Urban Native at Instagram. I honestly, I'll be brutally honest with you. I'm more of a farm boy these days. I do broadcasting on a contract work. So Lightning reached out to me. London Beefeaters, 2-time defending OFC champions. And I was happy to call the 113th CJFL Canada Cup last fall. Unfortunately, London lost to the Langley Rams, who picked up their first ever CJFL championship in their franchise's history. So I'm eager to see, football get back into the action in October or August, I should say, in fall. And then hopefully doing a little more OHL work next season through Cujo Entertainment and Rogers. I think that always puts a smile on my face when I can do that kind of stuff. As far as my favorite sports teams, oh man, when I was really young, it was all about the Toronto Blue Jays, the Winnipeg Jets, and that was pretty much it. But then as I grew into an adult, even you and I were talking before the broadcast began, just traveling and going to all these different places. I've been to the Great American Ballpark where Cincy plays, PNC Ballpark you've been to. I love, had that picture from the Allegheny behind the diamond. So just traveling and seeing all these different environments has been truly a blessing. And whether it's with the media or just going as a fan, it's enjoyable either way to me to kind of see different elements of the sports world, whether it's the pits of the Honda Indy or the hard court of the Rogers Cup or the Vanier Cups, the national championships I've done in hockey. It's always been fantastic. Athlete wise, I think any athlete that uses their money towards good things gets an A+ in my book. Guys that get paid millions of dollars to do essentially what you love to do as a child, to then be able to just hog that money and go buy Lamborghinis, fast girls and fast times and fast cars that they would like to say. Well, then those are the kind of guys that, their character speaks for themselves. But as much as there's haters out there for him, you think of a guy like LeBron James who builds that school and constantly gives kids college tuition and is constantly trying to do good for his community. Those are the athletes that I admire the most, to be honest with you, the ones that, go that extra mile. I know I'm wearing my Joey Votto jersey right now. I think for a guy that struggled with a lot of mental health issues, I can relate to, what he's gone through with his father. And you see kind of how he's trying to enjoy life now after going through those struggles. And whether it's making TikToks with a little girl in the stands or just having fun with the umps and the other players, that's also a good thing to see too, right? Because as we've been talking about even earlier with our conversation when it came to the basketball league and the National Basketball League of Canada, I should say, it's about growing that next generation. That's what sports is all about. So I'll finish you off with a couple quick stories if I could. One was going to a Blue Jays game and seeing a little kid with an R.A. Dickey jersey on, and he was standing out in the right field stands with his dad, and R.A. Dickey was taking batting practice, how they do on their off days. He's catching the fly balls, and he's, Mr. Dickey, R.A., and who knows if R.A. can even hear him, right? But he's throwing the balls back and, not even paying attention to the kid. And I'll admit we've had, a couple pre-beverages at a couple other establishments before heading into the stadium that day. So I just belted out, "Hey, Dickie, the kid's got your jersey. You give him a ball." And instantly, next ball he caught, turned around, tipped his cap, threw the kid the ball. The kid started bawling his eyes out. The dad looked at me. He's like, "We've been trying for like 20 minutes, man." And I was just like, it's nothing. Don't worry about it. To me, like, that's way more about than like catching a ball for myself or trying to have fun. Like, to me, doing something like that, it's awesome. Another time was at a Buffalo Sabres game. I'm a huge Jets fan, again, as I mentioned earlier, and we were Andrew Ladd was their captain, and I got glass row seats. And again, maybe a little too many influenced by too many cold ones there, Chris, but he's right in front of me, so I started pounding on the glass going, like, "Hey, Ladder, how about a puck?" And he gave me the dirtiest look in the world, brother. Just like, ew, what do you think I'm going to get? And I look back and there's a kid wearing a Lad jersey with a sign. And I'm going, for the kid. Flips the kid the puck instantly. Have a good time. 3 months later, I'm waiting for a World Junior Championship that's in at the ACC or Scotiabank, I guess now. And that kid and dad randomly walked by me while I was waiting for a friend at Union Station. And the dad said, it's been 3 months and my kid has not shut up about that puck or that experience. So again, it goes back to just, all about the kids. And I think that's what sports is all about, growing communities, number one, but you grow communities through the youth. So I think children are at the top of the pinnacle.
I was going to say, John, thank you so much for sharing these stories. I really appreciate it. And that's part of why I do this podcast too, because I learn new stuff from my guests every episode. And it was great to have you on today, John. And I love hearing your stories. And I was going to say, maybe before the NBL starts up again in the fall, hopefully in November, I can have you on and we can even do a preview of the league show.
Absolutely. I'd love to talk about some Beefeaters football too. It'll happen right around that same time. And Chris, I just want to, tell you, like, it was awesome meeting you at the championship there in Game 3 at the auditorium. But, I'll be perfectly frank. A lot of people ask me for doing podcasts and stuff like that. And as an old farm boy and an old school guy that doesn't even know what TikTok really even means, I usually shrug it off and say no. But with you, I see the amount of work you're putting in, the amount of guests you bring on, whether it's players, coaches, media members, PA announcers, social media people. The amount of connections, the amount of hard work, and the amount of drive that you're showing is truly incredible to me. I wish you nothing but the best of luck, my friend, and all the best with CDP, the podcast, heading forward.
And I was going to say, I'm definitely going to be coming down to a London Lightning game next year at Budweiser Gardens and stuff. So I'm looking forward to that too, because I want to cover a home game at the Bud. And thank you so much for the compliments. And this is something I have a passion for, and I always believe in hard work. And this is my dream. And hopefully I will get an opportunity in the radio industry at some point.
Well, the radio industry will be lucky to have you, man. Trust me, if I'm not trying to, pop a bubble in your dream. Your dream's your dream. But to be honest with you, what you're doing is going to grow bigger than what any other radio stations had out there if you continue to do it the way you're doing it, my friend.
Okay. Hey, podcast is only as good as its guests, and I'm very lucky to have great guests. And I really enjoyed talking to you today, John. And we'll definitely hook up in London for a Lightning game this year, and we'll definitely have you back on if you want to come back on in the fall, and we'll talk some more Lightning, and we'll talk some Beefeaters football as well.
Hey, all the best, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, John. Have a great day, and we'll keep in touch with you on social media. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed my podcast today with John Urban, the online play-by-play voice of the London Lightning. And you guys can check him out on Instagram. I've got it up here. You can follow John on Instagram at the Urban Native if you want to follow him. John's a big sports fan as well, and he does a great job with the Lightning online broadcast as well. And you guys can also check out the London Lightning, the lightningbasketball.ca. That's lightningbasketball.ca. They are the 5-time NBLC champions as well. And if you guys want to follow the NBL of Canada, you can check out the website at nblcanada.ca as well. And I'm hoping to be back with that league next year as well. And guys, just to let you know, the TBL finals tonight, game 2, Shreveport Mavericks against the Albany Platoons. The Mavs are up 1-0 in the series after their 123-115 win Saturday night. Game 2 is tonight at 7 o'clock in Albany, and the game is on NBL-TV. And if there's a game 3 Thursday, it'll be July 7th at 7 o'clock in Albany. And again, you can turn into Marissa Jacks and Allie Jacks on the TBL-TV. They do a great job. And I expect the Platoons to come out and have a better performance tonight against the Shreveport Mavericks. So it's basically win or go home for Albany, because if they don't win tonight, Shreveport's the 2022 TBL champion. So we'll see what happens there. But I really am a huge fan of the TBL. You guys can check out their website, thebasketballleague.net. And it's a really good league. And I'm looking forward to the game tonight. And I'll be watching on TBL TV at 7 o'clock between Shreveport and the Albany Platoons as well. And Phil Jackson, the legendary NBA coach and of the Bulls and the Lakers and Knicks, he he actually coached the Platoons back in the late 80s before he got to the NBA with the Chicago Bulls as assistant coach. So there's some history there with Phil Jackson as well. And guys, just to let you know, I have already mentioned this to John, the NFL news, the report today, the Cleveland Browns have traded Baker Mayfield to Carolina for a conditional 2024 fifth round draft pick. Sources are from the NFL Network in Rappaport as well. So stay tuned to the NFL Network for that. And the NHL 2022 draft starts Thursday, July 7th at the Bell Center in Montreal. And there are several Storm players that are hoped to hear their names called over the course of the 7 event round. So, and the leading the way is Michael Buschringer, a defenseman for the Guelph Storm. So we'll see what happens there, but hopefully we get a few more Storm players drafted. I'd like to see Buschringer drafted by the Detroit Red Wings. I think this kid's going to be in the NHL in 2 to 3 years from now as well. So, and also, guys, before we wrap up the podcast, just putting on the top 5 players, and Shane Wright, it looks like to be number 1 as well. And then we got a couple other players here too. Logan Cooley from the U.S. Hockey League, and Simon Nemec from Slovakia as well. So we'll see what happens here, guys, with the NHL draft, but that starts Thursday as well. And before I go, guys, like I do with all my podcast shows, I'm going to put this on here right now. Live with CDP Podcasts. The audio version is going to be downloaded to Google Podcasts, Anchor FM, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Spotify, Castbox, and LinkedIn. And I want to say thank you to everybody watching this live on my YouTube channel. Please subscribe and hit the like notification. And thank you to everyone watching this on Facebook Live, and also on my Twitter page at Chris D. Palme. If you wish to follow me there at Chris D. Palme, I'm at 897 followers there as well. And also, guys, you guys can check me out on TikTok at Live with CDP. At Live with CDP on TikTok as well. And StreamYard is the official live stream provider of Live with CDP podcast as well. And guys, just to wrap it up, next Live with CDP podcast, season 4, episode 7 will be Thursday, July 7th at 7 o'clock. Aaron Sanders, the online play-by-play announcer for the National Basketball League of Canada's Windsor Express. Aaron's been with the league from day one, and he's the voice of the NBLC Canada and the Windsor Express. He's also a public address announcer in the Windsor, Ontario area for the Windsor Lancers, and he's also a sports broadcaster, and he's also doing some work with CKL W800 in Windsor. So I'm looking forward to Aaron Sanders coming on tomorrow night, 7 o'clock with Live with CDP. This will be Aaron's 5th appearance on my podcast, tying Pat Gregor. So Pat Gregor has been on 5 times, and now Aaron. So I'm very lucky to have all these great guests come on my podcast, and I'm looking forward to speaking to Aaron Sanders as well. We're going to talk some Windsor Express, some NBL of Canada, and some of his work he's doing for CKLW in Windsor, and his public address announced roles with the Windsor Lancers as well. So I hope you guys can all tune in for season 4, episode 7, Live with CDP podcast tomorrow night at 7 o'clock Eastern again. So that's about it, guys. I want to say thank you again to my guest, John Urban from the London Lightning, their online play-by-play announcer. Does a tremendous job with their broadcast, loves the National Basketball League of Canada, and he's a huge sports fan as well, and he's a good person as well. So that's about it, guys. Again, I want to say thank you to everybody watching this live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and also on my audio platforms as well afterwards. So I hope you guys all have a great day, and we'll see you guys tomorrow night at 7 o'clock for another edition of Live with CDP podcast. Have a great afternoon, everybody, and we'll see you tomorrow at 7.